Hello friends and welcome to StudyIQ. My name is Dr. Mahipal Singh Rathod and in this video I will be discussing the Operation Rahat with you. What exactly was Operation Rahat? It was a relief operation of the Indian Armed Forces to evacuate Indian citizens and other foreign nationals from Yemen in 2015 during the Yemeni crisis. The duration of this operation was from 1st of April to 11th of April, roughly 10-11 days. The evacuation was done by the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy as well as Air India. Civilian aircrafts were used in this operation. More than 4,600 Indian citizens and 960 foreign nationals were evacuated out of Yemen. These foreign nationals belong to 41 countries. So this operation was a resounding success of the diplomatic and military prowess of India. Before going into the details of the Operation Rahat, I want to tell you that StudyIQ has a plethora of pendrive and tablet courses available for various competitive exams like SSC, CGL, CHSL, bank exams, RBI Grade B, then UPSC IAS exam. So we have a combined course available for all these topics as well as individual courses for IR, Geography, History, Science, Tech, Ecology, Economics. Optional courses for these subjects are available for IAS, then state PCS courses for Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, and defense courses for NDA, SSB and CDS entrances. To know more about these courses, you can visit our website studyiq.com. Talking about the evacuation operations, India has had great experience in evacuating its citizens from crisis situations. The Gulf War in 1990, where we evacuated our citizens from Iraq and Kuwait, that was a huge lesson for India, and over the period of time, the past 3 decades, India has honed its skills remarkably well on how to respond in a crisis situation like this. Prior to Yemen, there were situations in Lebanon in 2006, Libya in 2011, Iraq in 2003, and again in Iraq in 2014 when ISIS attacked cities like Mosul, etc. In all these events, India evacuated its citizens from these countries safely. The biggest evacuation operation remains the one in 1990 when we evacuated 110,000 people from Iraq and Kuwait during the first Gulf War using nearly 500 flights by Air India and even cruise ships. This remains the world's largest civilian evacuation till date. A couple of years ago, a Bollywood film showcased these events in a movie called Airlift. Now let us see the map of West Asia. Yes, this is West Asia, or as people like to call it, Middle East. Yemen lies on the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. To the north of Yemen lies the country of Saudi Arabia. Its eastern neighbor is Oman, and across the Gulf of Aden here, to the south of Yemen lies Somalia, and to the west there are countries of Eritrea and Djibouti. Now this is the Gulf of Aden, and this small strait that you see here, this is called Bab al-Mandeb. You should note down the name. It connects the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, Bab al-Mandeb. The importance of Djibouti here has to be noticed. Djibouti is situated in the Horn of Africa. This region is known as the Horn of Africa because it resembles a horn if you see this area landmass. Now Djibouti is has a very strategic location because it is situated between the Gulf of Aden and near the Red Sea, and many countries of the world have military bases over here, and they try to operate from this place because there is a lot of piracy and precious cargo coming from Southeast Asia, from South Asia going towards Europe has to be protected. So Djibouti is very important, and India also used Djibouti in this rescue operation, and Djibouti was made the base from where all the flights took off and the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy operated. Indian Army was not involved here, it was only the Navy and the Air Force. So Djibouti and Yemen. What is the capital of Yemen? It is Sana'a, situated here. But the most important city, the largest port, is Aden. If you see the distance from Djibouti to Aden, it is not very much. So there could be continuous flights, multiple flights from Aden to Djibouti. The capital of Djibouti is also called Djibouti. And we got the permission to use Djibouti airstrip and the port to bring our citizens back from Yemen. There was initially a plan to use Muscat because India has good terms with Oman, but this distance was too much between Sana'a and Muscat and it would take long time for flights to go and come back. Now it is to be noticed here that India also has good relations with Saudi Arabia, which was involved in this war. Saudi Arabia started its bombing campaign over Yemen on 27th of March. So Saudi Arabia was bombing Yemen and we had to evacuate from here. So India used its diplomatic skills to get a time frame, a window from Saudi Arabia to stop the bombing so that we could evacuate our citizens. But the problem was Djibouti. We had no earlier cultural or historical ties with Djibouti. So the Indian ambassadors of the neighboring countries got in touch with Djibouti, and the Djibouti government gave India permission to use its airport, but only for evacuating civilians. The trouble in Yemen was going on from a long time, since the early 2000s, but in 2015, the government of President Abdul Mansur Hadi had been toppled by the Houthi rebels and they had taken over large parts of the country. Saudi Arabia decided to intervene, and the Operation Decisive Storm was launched by Saudi Arabia and its Gulf Council partners. So they launched this campaign on March 27th when the Saudi Air Force started bombing the Houthi rebels. And they started a very disastrous bombing campaign of Yemen. And because of this, there was now difficulty for civilians because the continuous bombing posed a serious security threat. The Indian government had already began giving advisories since January when the government had been toppled. So since January, the Ministry of External Affairs had been issuing advisories to the citizens of India living in Yemen that please get out of Yemen. They asked on January 21, 2015 from the Indian expats to leave Yemen. Then a second advisory was given out on February 20th to avoid travel to Yemen. On March 25th, a final advisory was given just 2 days before the attack. It was almost sure that Saudi Arabia will intervene. At that time, MEA issued an urgent advisory to all Indian citizens to evacuate Yemen as soon as possible. But no Indian citizen left, or maybe even just a few might have left, but most of the Indian citizens stayed put. However, 5,000 citizens who were living in Yemen had to be evacuated when on 27th of March, Saudi Arabia started its bombing campaign. So now these 5,000 people were trapped. Many of the nurses who were working there they were from Kerala. There were many businessmen who were from the Gujarati communities. India and Yemen have had historical trade relations. So there were a lot of businessmen who are living in Yemen, having their businesses there, and many professionals like nurses, etc., are also working in Yemen. Now it was responsibility of the Indian government to get these people out. So what were the challenges in front of the Indian effort? First was the permission from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was bombing and we had to ask Saudi Arabia to give us a window of 2, 3, 4 hours to take out our citizens. So we got the permission because we have good relations with Saudi Arabia. Second was the Yemeni airspace. Now the government had been toppled and there was no security in the Yemen airspace. Anyone could fire at a plane that is trying to land on the airport. Houthi rebels had control over a city like Aden and they were also fighting in Sana'a. Fighting was also going on there. So the Aden airport as well as the port were under the control of Houthi rebels, and you never know, even if one person starts shooting at a plane, that plane cannot take off or even land. So it was a very big security threat to the civilian airplanes. Then no military plane was allowed there, so Indian government had to send its Air India planes, civilian planes, to Yemen and then bring the people of India to Djibouti. From Djibouti, they could use military aircrafts to bring them to India, but they could not send in their Globemaster C-17s to Sana'a or Aden. Then sandstorm. During this time, from 1st of April to 4th, 5th April, there was a huge sandstorm that engulfed the entire city of Aden. The visibility on the runway was reduced to less than 500 meters, so it was very difficult for the pilots to land or take off because they could not see anything, and sandstorm are very dangerous for planes and their engines. Then there was a language barrier while negotiating or conducting ops, because when the Houthi rebels controlled the ATC, the air traffic control, as well as the port, then the Indian soldiers, the Indian naval persons, they had to go to the rebels, talk to them that we are here only to evacuate, we are not here to fight on behalf of Saudi Arabia, so we are there only to evacuate our citizens. But for that you have to talk, and once a person goes taking a gun or he is dressed as a military personnel, then it is very difficult, someone could fire on them. So the language barrier was also a security risk, and it was posing problems while dealing with Saudi Arabia and Djibouti as well. And finally, there was the issue of neutrality. India could not portray to either of these parties that we are intervening in this war, either on the behalf of the Houthis or on the behalf of the Hadi government, because this Yemeni war was actually a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So we have good relations with Iran. It's an important trading and energy partner of India today. We cannot afford to lose Iran as our partner. and Saudi Arabia is also one of our good trading and energy partners. So both these sides were fighting in Yemen as proxies, and we could not afford to offend either of those. So Indian armed forces had to make sure that not even a single bullet has to be fired on Yemeni soil. So the Indian effort was led by General VK Singh. He was the Minister of State External Affairs, a junior minister, that is deputy to Sushma Swaraj. General Singh himself traveled to both Djibouti, so he managed all the operations from Djibouti where the India's base was operating, and then he even went to Sana'a in Yemen, which was an active war zone. Fight was going on there, so he went with an Air India plane, and when he saw that some people are left behind, they are not going to be accommodated in that flight, he stayed behind with those Indian people and said that you have to come back to get these people. If you don't come back for them, you will come back for me because I am the minister. And that was true. The Air India planes came back again to pick the remaining Indians as well as General VK Singh back. No Indian minister has actively been involved in such a scenario since the time of Jaswant Singh, when he himself escorted the terrorists and took them to Kandahar and negotiated with the terrorists directly back in 1999. Operational base for India's armed forces was Djibouti, so the Air Force as well as the Navy was operating from the city of Djibouti. Evacuation was done by both sea and air. So the naval ships INS Mumbai, INS Sumitra and INS Tarkash were used. Couple of passenger ferries from Lakshadweep that are used to take people from Cochin to Lakshadweep, they were also called up because these naval ships, they do not have much space. They cannot accommodate hundreds of people. So we need passenger ferries. But for security, these frigates or destroyers are required. C-17 Globemaster, one of the largest planes that Indian Air Force has, that was also deployed here. Civilian aircraft from Air India were used because only Air India planes could go to Yemen and come back. Military planes could not go inside Yemen. This is the INS Tarkash. You can see people are coming on board. The Marcos Commando, the Marine Commandos, were also used for providing security because they went in ahead in small boats and they wanted security for these big ships and also for the civilians to come on board. So they had to talk to the rebels and provide security. So Marcos were also used. Here again you can see the civilians, the proper documentation is going on in this picture. You can see all the luggage here, and all proper checks and screenings had to be done because even if one bag out of these hundreds of luggage has a bomb on it, it can blow up the entire ship. And there was a risk because the Houthi rebels could try this suicide attack on a ship of another country because anything can happen in a war zone. So proper screening and checks had to be done. But Saudi Arabia gave time of only 2-3 hours, sometimes even just 1 hour. We were given a window of only 1 hour to pick up all the citizens, load them up on the ship and leave. And all these checks, security screenings, etc., documentation, document verification, it had to be done within this 1 hour or just 2-3 hours. And hundreds of people doing this task was a humongous task. And so completing all these checks, documentation within this window was a humongous task. But still it was done efficiently by the Indian Navy. Then Air India also flew in using its civilian flights on Sana'a and Aden airport. You can see General VK Singh here, himself personally supervising the rescue effort, the evacuation effort. Again, the C-17 Globemaster, these planes were used to fly the citizens from Djibouti to India. So first they were brought from Aden, Sana'a to Djibouti, and from Djibouti they were taken to Kochi or Mumbai. This is a photograph from inside the C-17 Globemaster. As you can see, this is a bare bones plane. It is not a civilian aircraft, so it does not have all the facilities of a normal aeroplane that you see. But it is a big aircraft and it can accommodate a lot of people inside. 5,600 plus total number of people were evacuated. 4,600 plus were Indians, 960 were foreign nationals. 41 countries asked for India's help because they did not have the operational capability to carry out a rescue operation of such a scale. They requested Indian embassy to help out. They requested the Indian government and India obliged. 2,900 were evacuated using flights out of Sana'a and 1,670 from Aden, Al Hudaydah and Al Mukalla using ships by sea route. This is a picture where you can see the happy people after being evacuated from Yemen, and this is the crew of Air India. Even the civilian crew did a big thing because they were asked to fly into a war zone. Even if one bullet is fired, a plane can have difficulties. There was a risk to their lives, but still they played their part for the service of the nation and for the service of its citizens. Amul also made a beautiful cartoon on this. Yemen and women ko salam. So they saluted the brave Indian Air Force personnel and the Navy personnel here. Now coming to the future strategy. There are about 70 lakh Indians in West Asia, and West Asia is prone to political instability. So should India always adopt a reactionary policy that whenever something goes wrong, then only we will send our rescue ships, rescue aeroplanes? Why do we always have to rescue people when things go bad? Why don't we have an active policy where we intervene? But then again, we have the risk of antagonizing either the Iran or Saudi Arabia. There's a cold war going on in the West Asia right now. So what do you think personally? Tell me in the comments. Should India intervene in such scenarios, in political situations in the West Asia, or it should remain neutral as we have done till date? Should we have a reactionary policy always where we completely rely on rescue operations? And what about the advisories? So stricter advisories are required. Right now, the attitude of Indians is that they don't even listen to these advisories. They don't pay any attention to the advisories released by the embassies. So Indians in general also have to change their attitude. We have to understand that security risks, security threats are important. They are more important than your job security. So even if you are working in Yemen or any other country, if there is a threat of war breaking out in that country, then it is better to leave the job even if you're not getting salary for 1 month or 2 months. So in Iraq, it happened that the nurses had not gotten salary for many months, so they decided not to leave Iraq, and ultimately they were trapped there for many days. So such kind of scenarios happen because we take security as a low priority. That has to change. We have to understand that security is important. Our lives are more important than our jobs or our businesses. With this, I come to an end to this lecture. I hope you liked it. If you did, kindly give the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. If you did not like the video, tell me in the comment section what could be improved. Give me your feedback. Thank you very much for watching this. Jai Hind.